Growing up in the 90s, I was a big fan of the children's sitcom Sabrina the Teenage Witch, so it took me by surprise to discover that there had in fact been a game based on the series released for the PlayStation 1 which had completely passed me by. Perhaps it had something to do with the fact that A Stitch in Time was released in 2001 during the dying years of both the PlayStation 1 and the show itself, or it could be down to just how bad this game actually is. I mean, it's really, really bad. So where does A Stitch in Time fit into the Sabrina the Teenage Witch canon? Well, nowhere really. The game's story is as bare bones as they come. Salem, after breaking into the offices of the Witches' Council to try and steal a copy of his criminal record, accidentally destroys something called the Cosmic Clock, which governs time and space. As a result of this, an evil entity known only as Chaos is unleashed, and Sabrina must travel through time in order to retrieve the pieces of the broken clock and vanquish Chaos once and for all. You won't find any references to Aunt Hilda or Zelda in this game, and there's no sign of series favourites like Harvey or Valerie either, which makes the whole thing feel very disconnected from the TV programme it's based on. At least Salem sounds like Salem, even if he doesn't quite look like him.
Yeah. You think anybody'll notice?
As for Sabrina, well, the credits say that it's Melissa Joan Hart providing the dialogue, but I don't know.
Yipes! The only way to stop Chaos is to hunt down all 12 pieces of the cosmic clock and put it back together again.
I was afraid you'd say that.
There are 12 pieces of the clock to retrieve in total, and you'll visit 12 levels spread across 4 worlds to track each piece down. Get ready to see the sights and sounds of the Stone Age, ancient Egypt, medieval Japan and the Wild West. Or maybe don't, because there's about as much thought put into the various different worlds as there is to the generic story. Each level is populated by enemies who either launch projectiles at you or just try and barge straight into you. Thankfully though, as a witch you are equipped with a zap attack that essentially works like a homing missile, some of the time. You can also pick up spellbooks which let you cast more complex spells that can turn foes into frogs, freeze enemies, shrink them, or even send them floating up into the sky. These essentially all function in pretty much the same way, halting the enemy in their tracks and allowing you to spam your zap attack. The game does make a distinction between general enemies and animals, with the instruction manual stating that magic just doesn't work on animals, so coyotes, camels and woolly mammoths must all be avoided in order to stay safe, which is easier said than done. Thankfully, the Japan levels are devoid of animals. As we all know, there are no animals in Japan, except for one floating serpent creature. The biggest enemies in the game by far are the camera and the controls. As you try and move Sabrina around a level, you'll feel as though you're simultaneously walking on ice while trudging through quicksand. And the camera will do everything in its power to ensure you can't see where you're going or what's attacking you. And then there's the jumping. Oh god, the jumping.
Ow! Ow! Ow!
Salem will appear throughout the levels. At first I didn't know what these stages were. Sabrina would often ask Salem for advice, but instead of a hint, you're often on the receiving end of something like this.
What did one camel say to the other camel? Here's spit in your eye.
Jesus. It was only after I died for the first time that I realised these Salem Meet-and-Greets were actually checkpoints. As for how you find the 12 clock pieces, well, you'll get one at the end of each world for beating a pretty awful boss. Each of these boss encounters is essentially the same thing. Avoid some type of attack while spamming the zap button until the health bar is depleted. The other 8 clock pieces can be obtained by revisiting the levels once you've unlocked access to previously hard to reach places or secret areas that require you to be wearing the correct outfit in order to gain entry to them. As for how you obtain different outfits, you technically buy them off this guy after completing each world using the gems you've collected along the way, but there doesn't really seem to be any particular cost to the outfits. He'll just take however many gems you've acquired over the course of a world in exchange for the next outfit, meaning there's little incentive to actually try and collect all of the gems. Once you've collected all 12 clock pieces, it's time to face off against the evil Chaos in what is one of the most stupid boss battles I've encountered in a video game. In what essentially boils down to a game of rock, paper, scissors, Chaos will take turns taking the form of either a cat, mouse or elephant. After he transforms, you take the form of one of the remaining options. mouse beats elephant, cat beats mouse, elephant beats cat, etc. Once you've both taken on your new forms, the stronger person must chase the other around the inside of a giant clock in the hope that you collide and chip away at the other's health bar. Seriously, and it goes on and on until one of you perish. After beating chaos, order is restored and you're treated to the second and final cutscene of the game.
I hope I never have to clean up a mess like that again.
You're forgetting about your room, of course.
My room?
All in all, the game will take you about 2 hours to complete, and despite the cruel camera and dodgy controls, it's a pretty straightforward affair from start to finish. And maybe you're thinking, it's an old game, you can forgive some design problems and gameplay issues. This came out in 2001. We had gotten used to 3D PS1 gaming standards like Crash Bandicoot, Metal Gear Solid Tomb Raider and more. In fact, by the time A Twitch in Time was released, the PlayStation 2 was already on shelves. I can safely say that A Stitch in Time is a game that should not have been made and should never be played by anyone. And I'm pretty sure no one ever did. Except me, just last week.
Salem, there you are. Got any good hints?
How'd you like to get munched by a humongous sumo wrestler? No? Then stay on your toes.
Oh my god. Thanks so much for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and I'll be back next week with another video from the Random Game Room.